Hey guys, welcome to System Design Fight Club. Today we're going to be covering the online auction problem. So this is just a thing kind of like eBay where you can place bids. You submit an item to be auctioned and then people can place bids on it. There's two variations. One of them is when you have a fixed auction deadline. I thought that was how I haven't personally really used eBay a whole lot, but I thought that was how it usually works. Another approach is where you have the auction deadline 10 minutes after the final bid. So the auction deadline is dynamic and it keeps moving. The numbers we're going to be using for this problem today are we'll have 10 million items auctioned off every day. 1 billion items will be placed. 1 billion bids will be placed every day. Any questions before we dive into the numbers? All right, I'll keep going then. So how many items per second? And how many bids per second? All right, there's 100,000 seconds in a day, so we're going to do 10 million divided by 100K. That's going to come out to about 100 items added per second. That's probably a little bit high. I probably should have used a smaller number here. And then how many bids per second? We're going to handle, so we have 1 billion. We're going to divide that by 100K. Times 10 gets us to 1 million. So it's 1,000 times 10. So that's going to come out to 10,000 bids per second. I like that number a lot. I think that sounds kind of fair. All right. Any questions before we hop into the diagram? All right, let's go for it. So we are going to have, I'm going to try out some fancier stuff for this today. So it's going to be user submitting. Whoops. Wow. Submitting bid. There we go. And we'll have another person that's competing against them. So we'll also have the user for, we'll say competing user. Viewing bid. Okay, so we have that. Then we're also going to want to have, we need a backend service, of course, for receiving the bid. So this will be the bid receiving service. Okay, so we'll have the request come in, and then we're going to want to have it shown to the other users. They can either polling might be fine. So you'd either have a bid listing service or you could do WebSockets. I think I'm just going to go ahead and go with the WebSockets approach. So you would kind of have, you'd have another, you can go ahead and draw out 2 different machines for this service. So I'll go ahead and box it like that. So this is one service, and then we're going to draw that. And so then it's going to be broadcast back using the WebSocket for server-side events. So you're going to want to have Redis pub sub. We'll use this. That's our broker today. Redis pub sub, stick the item onto Redis pub sub, and then it's going to publish it to all the other bidders. Let's label that Redis pub sub. Okay, but you're also going to want to record it in a database. So I think we'll also have, I guess you would probably want to have something like task. Well, so you're going to need a data store. You're going to need a data store to start with. So we're going to say the bid data store, and I'm going to kind of do an event sourcing approach with this again. I'm kind of a personal fan of event sourcing. What's the best way to Okay, just gonna copy it into there. And then, all right, so I think you can have it listening to the pub sub thing. An alternative approach is if you just had it on the service itself. And so then you could have the service first send it over to the task runner. And then you would have it also put it on Redis pub sub. I guess that's also kind of a fair approach. Actually, I kind of like that a little bit more. Having it run, sticking it into the data store. Well, so actually, if we stick it into the data store directly, and we don't even need the task runners to copy it into there. And then if there's an outage on the data store itself, that would be pretty helpful because then we wouldn't go on and try and publish it out to the other consumers. I'm kind of a fan of that. Sometimes it's a good practice to decouple the data store from your broker. In this case, it doesn't actually make sense to do. So the broker in this case is just for broadcasting to the other users, and you shouldn't really show it to the other users unless it actually makes them the data store. I think I'm going to stick with this approach. So we're first going to copy it into the bid data store, and then we're going to tell the other bidders about it over a WebSocket. So we're actually not even going to have these task runners going. And then this is just going to be doing event sourcing. So we don't really, we're going to have, okay, let's talk about the schema of this really quick. Bid data store schema, right side, inner. Okay. So there's going to be a bunch of different auctions. So we're going to need the auction ID as part of the schema. We would probably want to have the user ID of who's bidding on it. 3456 345000. Do we need a bid ID? So user ID, a user could submit multiple bids. So I think we are also going to need that. So we could have a bid ID, maybe a timestamp. We would want a timestamp for the bid. We need a timestamp for each of the bid. I don't know if we actually need a bid ID quite yet. Okay, I guess 137 0005123. So it's a Unix epoch timestamp. I think that would be roughly correct. Actually, I think it's like that. Okay. Do we still need a bid ID? So if we did use a bid ID, I would definitely do something kind of like a UUID where it's like ABC, DEF, 1, 2, 3, DEF, ABC. Do I really need that though? I'm not sure. You know what? I guess I would. I kind of like it. Let's keep it for now. I'm not sure if we're actually going to need it, given the timestamp used for also keeping them unique when a user is doing multiple bids. I kind of like it though. So we're going to keep it for now. Okay, so we have that, but it's not going to have what the winning bid is on an auction. So I think we're going to want to have a second one that's just tracking the auction overall, and closing it out. Okay, we're going to start with the variation of the fixed deadline. Okay. This is going to be the auction data store. Let's go ahead and have this. Let's talk about the schema for that. We're going to have a deadline. It'll be something in the future. We'll try 167,000,9,000. And then we'll have a status on it, whether the auction is still running. So it's like open or closed. We would maybe have the winning user ID or the current top bid. At least when it ends, we're going to want to have the top bid and the winning user ID. Let's go with winner ID. We'll have sold price. And then what if the user fails to pay properly? What if their listed payment method doesn't go through? That's how, okay, maybe we should have a closing. Have closing and then closed. Okay. I think that's a good idea. And then we could have a cron job. Do we still, yeah, I think we could have a cron job kind of thing that every 15 minutes looks at auctions that can close out and goes through the timestamps. I'm liking the idea of that. I'm liking the idea of that. Auction closing on task. So it'll look at, you can look at the open auctions, or I don't even know if it needs to do that because it can validate them off of, it can look at bids for the auctions and then validate them based on whether or not it still is open, or even look at the deadline for that. You're going to need to, I guess you're going to need to look at both of those. You're going to need to read off both of those regardless, and then you're going to write the result back to the auction data store. Okay. So you can also have, you could have users looking for auctions, like browsing through them. Let's maybe talk about that. And you would also have users that are placing items. So it's the 10 million transactions per, the 10 million items per second or per day thing. That's another part that we'll want. So we're gonna have browser for user creating an auction. User creating auction, user browsing auctions, user browsing auctions. Okay, and this will be the auction viewing service. Listing, auction listing service. Have the auction hosting service. Okay, so the auction posting service, that arrow is going the wrong way. You're going to submit an auction that you want to place. It'll go into the data store with an open status, a given deadline, and then the winning ID will be null. So you can also have a null value there. And you'll have a sold price. You would want this as a string. So yeah, I would, you want to do that as a string, or it can be null. Okay, and then you can read that off. You could do something like, I think you could do PostgreSQL here, given that it's 100 items per second. So it's not going to have a lot of writes, and then you could scale it out with leader follower pattern. So I'm going to say, actually, we can just write over here, and we'll say PostgreSQL, and we'll scale up reads with leader follower pattern. So you'll have read replicas. One leader DB for writes and some read replicas. Nice. Okay. And then for this, it's going to be write heavy, and you're not really reading directly off of it. You're going to be doing pub sub to the other ones. Although I guess when new people are joining the auction, you would maybe want to have the latest winning bid. maybe you could also have a Redis cache for people joining in. That's tricky. Maybe we can come back to that a little bit more later. I don't think people should be reading off this a whole lot, though. I don't think this would make a lot of sense. Actually, you know what? If it's people joining into an auction, that might not be as much. No, it would still be a pretty fair number of people that would be joining it in and out. That would still be a fair number of reads. That would make it read heavy. I don't really want to do that. I think a Redis cache could even make sense. And then as people are joining, they could read off of that cache. It's good to keep like a Redis cache of the winning bid, Redis cache of current winning bid. Okay, I think you would need a task runner to put it into there. Yeah, we can go ahead and have a task runner for that. I'm just doing, they're just cloning it into there. You can't actually push off of a broker, to my understanding. I don't think even with Redis pub sub it necessarily, I don't think it actually even works like that with Redis pub sub. So you're gonna have this just kind of listening to it, copying it over to there, and then browser for a user joining the auction. User joining auction. There we go. And so that would do a read off of the Redis cache. I guess it's probably okay if it's, yeah, and then this can be given a TTL of like an hour or something. And I guess, so we would try Redis, and then we would maybe even have Cassandra as a fallback. You know what? Yeah, okay. I guess we could do that. Then we have this thing as a fallback. I'm still feeling Cassandra on this data store though. An alternative is maybe DynamoDB. I'm hoping the Redis cache is, I'm thinking the Redis cache is probably the best approach though. So, Cassandra. Okay, sure. I think I'm pretty happy with how that's looking right now. And we're gonna say stateful service WebSockets used. Okay, I think this is pretty solid for the approach for the fixed auctions. So I guess we can move on to the dynamic deadline. Any questions before we move on to that?
Yes, I would like to ask one question. Hello. So yes, you said that you are going to use WebSockets and that it's stateful. Could you give the reasoning for that? I mean, because the HTTP connection, the connection would be persistent. That's why.
Yeah. So it means that you would have a persistent web connection. So I was thinking, so when you place, I was thinking that the other users are probably going to be watching the auction. So you could have auctions that kind of like heat up. And so then you might have like 10 to 12 people just kind of like watching the web page as bids come in. So the last 5 minutes or so of an auction, I think, is when most of the bids are going to be placed. And people just try and like beat the previous price by like a penny or two in the last minute. And so I think in the last few minutes, you'll have the people interested in the item are just kind of like logged in, watching it actively. When you have the fixed deadline like this, that is. I guess in the dynamic approach, we'll get rid of the socket. Let's not use a WebSocket on the dynamic approach, because then you don't really have people that are squatting and like watching it for like a whole yeah, okay. Let's maybe switch over to I'll say 60 minutes. And then people maybe just kind of like come back and like watch it or something. They'll come over and maybe reload the page more in this approach. So then this one makes more sense to have polling or just full page refreshes. You can have full page refreshes on this approach. While this one you would want to have WebSockets, because then everyone's going to be watching it in the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes for that one. Does that
Understood.
make
Thank you.
sense? Or what was that? Was that good?
Yeah, nice.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the dynamic one now. So let's copy that. Okay, so you're not going to have a deadline on this one. You would have maybe the latest bid time. Have the current closing time. So you'd have maybe like 24 hours to start with. And then as you're coming into those last 24 hours, as you're coming into the last hour, since we have the 60-minute closing thing, that's when this thing, which is going to be, we'll have this run every 15 minutes. I'm going to have that on both. Yeah, we'll have that run every 15 minutes. So we have the current closing time, and then in the last hour, as new bids come in, it'll figure out what the current next closing time should be, and it'll write it over to here. And this will also do the validation for it'll stop accepting. So for example, if a new bid comes in like 17 minutes after the previous one, that works for the previous one too, is like if a bid comes in after the closing time, it won't accept it in the cron job. You would have that business logic. Well, over here, you would look at the current closing time, or you could even look at the last bid that came in, and do some business logic, and that would be a good filter for closing out or declining new bids coming in over there. Okay, so we have Redis pops up. So that doesn't make sense in that one. In this one, we have so we have the bid receiving service, and then we want to have the bid viewing service. Yeah, bid viewing service. And we're not going to use WebSockets for that. That would okay, actually we wanted to title that one bid viewing service. And this is for like a fresh page load. While over here, these two are going to be combined, since they're both going to be for fresh page load. So you don't even have Redis pub sub anymore. Okay, you could do, we have the receiving service. Do we still want to have cache? Does that make sense? Okay. Would we still want to maybe have a broadcast and duplicate it into a cache, or should we just read off of the data store? I'm starting to feel DynamoDB a lot more, or could we possibly just have it write the winning price directly into the data store instead of having Cassandra first? I'm kind of feeling that, and then just switch over to DynamoDB. But then you have, so this is also used for opening and close, for opening the options. think that might just be fair. Could try that out and see how it works. Well, so the issue with this one would be that if you have a runner up or the winner fails to pay, I guess if the winner fails to pay, then you would just maybe have to redo your auction. I think that might be fine for an approach. Or, okay, actually, yeah. So I think we would also want to have this one talking to a payment service. I actually forgot to fill that in on the, no, we're not going to do that. It would be an external payment service. This would be something like PayPal or Stripe or Paytm or something like that. And then this thing would want to do a request response with that when it's trying to close it out. Find something that can successfully be closed out, you would use that. Okay. You could still, yeah, okay, so this would still work for that. This would, yeah, you can still use the cron task for trying to do that. And we're just not going to try and have the runner up pay instead. Bid receiving service, bid viewing service. So this one is going to read directly off of that now. And we'll use DynamoDB. And we can get strong read consistency on that. So it's just something that handles partitioning for us. I guess that works. Okay, and then I guess this one would also, when you're placing the new bid, if you get a new winning bid, this thing would also handle updating the current closing time if it needs bumped. So now we're doing HTTP. You're just doing full page reloads in this scenario. Full page reloads are common. No WebSockets. Okay. Yes, that works. I think this is everything we need for this. This was kind of a quick problem. I did do it a few months back, but I didn't record it when I previously covered it. I think it was way back in like July or August. I think I'm comfortable with this approach. I think I like it. Any questions or comments, or should we go ahead and close out the session? Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Thanks for joining, guys. I'll start a thread in Discord. If there's any questions after this, feel free to post your questions over there. Thanks. See you guys.